Welcome everyone to Whimsy Woven Stories. Here, we explore gripping tales of real-life twists. Join our storytelling community.
I'm a 34M and have been married for almost 4 years. Our relationship has been rocky almost the entire time. My wife has anger issues that are exacerbated when she's drunk, and she drinks often. She has been physically and mentally/psychologically abusive to me for years. I knew this was a problem from the beginning, but she refused to change. Every time I try to express my feelings or explain how her actions hurt me, they're dismissed simply because her intention wasn't to hurt me. On multiple occasions, she has outright told me she doesn't care about my feelings. She says things like, "What do you want from me? Divorce me then." I should have done just that, but I was hopeful that I could change things within myself just to survive, so our daughter could continue to grow up with a family. Instead, what I've really been doing is being a coward, avoiding standing up for myself. Throughout our marriage, I have been 100% faithful and loyal. Our last 2 fights out of many were about her lying to my face about money, hiding it, and being sneaky. We don't have any financial issues, nor do I micromanage her spending. This was the second time I caught her doing something shady like that. It hurt me deeply because we're supposed to be 50-50 partners, and there was no reason for her to act that way. Once again, when I addressed it with her, she hit me with, "What do you want from me? Divorce me." I've already apologized. The next fight happened when she took a trip to visit family for 2 days. The whole family went except for me because I couldn't get time off work. Over those 2 days, she didn't call or text me once. I texted her good morning on the first day, but she ignored it all day. I texted her again, explaining how I felt ignored, and she apologized but then continued not to call or text until she was on her flight home. That absolutely broke me and made it clear that I'm not valued in her eyes. When it came to my wants and needs, she never made me feel like they were a priority, the way I would for her. It was obvious I was an inconvenience to her, and I endured this for years, simply for the sake of keeping my family together. I absolutely love being a dad and a family man. One night, feeling overwhelmed, I went out by myself, telling myself I wanted to be done with her. I ended up at a bar and met a girl. We started chatting and flirting, and she made me feel amazing. She gave me everything I'd been wanting from my wife, basically making me feel like I mattered. And that's where I did something stupid. I hooked up with this girl. My wife must have had a sixth sense because she felt something was off the next morning, probably because of my shame and guilt. I told her everything. I don't want to make excuses for what I did. I was wrong, and that's not the kind of person I am. I'm so sad and ashamed of myself because I lost the respect of the people I love most. Instead of doing the right thing and divorcing her, I put myself in this compromising situation. Now, please call me out if this sounds like bullshit, but I'm just expressing my thoughts. I would never have done anything like this if my wife had treated me better. I'm not saying she's to blame, but in a way, she was complicit because she ignored my wants and needs throughout our relationship. Even as I type this, I feel like I'm making excuses, but I know it's the truth. I was a loyal and faithful husband until now. As terrible as my wife was to me, she didn't deserve this, and I regret it every day. I have mixed feelings. Part of me feels like a terrible person, and another part of me feels like a good man who made a terrible decision. I am currently divorcing her and would appreciate your honest feedback. TLDR, wife is abusive and treats me horribly. I cheated because I didn't have the courage to divorce her earlier. I'm feeling confused but am now divorcing her. Story 2. I kicked out my girlfriend and stepdaughter after they tried to exclude me from her wedding that I'm paying for. So, my stepdaughter Sarah is getting married on August 3rd. The whole wedding planning thing has been eating up her and her mom's time for months now. I'm talking every conversation every free minute. They're obsessing over it. I say her mom because, well, we've been living together for about 10 years but we're not married. And honestly, after everything that's happened, I'm really glad we never tied the knot. Anyway, back to Sarah. She graduated last December from university, which, by the way, I paid for. It was a state school, so not like Ivy League expensive, but still, $1,400,000 is nothing to sneeze at. And it's not just college I helped with. I also bought her a car so she could get to and from school. She's been living with us throughout her college years, and even after she graduated, still no job. She just chills at the house while planning her wedding. Now let me tell you about her real dad, David. Total deadbeat. He pops in and out of her life like some ghost that only shows up when it suits him. He's never contributed a penny to her education, hasn't paid any child support. Don't even get me started on that. And yet Sarah worships the ground this guy walks on. Every time he shows up, she's all, dad this and dad that, like he's some kind of superhero. Meanwhile, I've been the one holding it all together, paying for everything, being there when she needed anything. It's frustrating, but honestly, I've always just chalked it up to Lisa, my girlfriend, enabling it. She never pushed for child support in the settlement, and always made sure David had a place in Sarah's life, even when he'd disappear for months and break her heart over and over. Fast forward to the wedding planning. The venue holds about 250 people, which seems like a lot, but when you start adding up the bride's side, the groom's side, plus friends and family, it fills up fast. So, I figured, since I'm footing most of the bill, I should at least get to invite a handful of people. I'm not asking for much, just 20 people. Close friends, a couple family members, people who've been part of my life and helped me through the years. Lisa said, yeah, no problem, we'll take care of it, so I didn't think twice about it. Now here's where things start to go south. One Saturday, I'm out golfing with one of my buddies, Jake, who's on my list of 20 people I wanted at the wedding. Just casual talk, I ask him if he's coming, and he looks at me like I've got 3 heads. He says, nah man, I didn't get an invite, but I got this announcement thing. So I'm like, what do you mean an announcement? And he goes to his car, digs around in the back seat through months of old mail and pulls out this envelope. Sure enough, it's a wedding announcement, not an invitation. And guess whose name isn't on there? Mine. It's got David's name, her real dad, and Lisa's name, but nowhere does it mention me. The guy who's paying for this whole thing. At that point, I could feel the heat rising in my face. I kept my cool, but inside, I was furious. So later, I go home and confront Lisa about it. And what does she say? Oh, well, 250 is a tight number, and we had to make some cuts. Wait, what? My people, the 20 people I wanted at this wedding, didn't make the cut? I'm the one bankrolling this thing, and I can't even have 20 of my own people there? It was one of those moments where you can't even believe what you're hearing. Like, how did this even happen? So I'm standing there, seething, while she's trying to explain how there just wasn't enough room and that if some people don't RSVP, maybe we could squeeze a couple of my people in. At this point, I'm already thinking of pulling the plug on this whole thing. I mean, if they're not going to respect me enough to include the few people I care about, why am I even involved? But the real kicker, not using that word, but you get what I mean, came the next day, Sunday dinner. We're at Sarah's fiancé's parents' house, just your typical family dinner. Except when we get there, guess who's at the table? Yep, David, the deadbeat dad himself. So we sit down to eat, and halfway through the meal, Sarah drops the bomb on us. She's all smiles, saying how excited she is because David is going to be able to make it to the wedding and, wait for it, he's going to be the one to give her away. The whole room erupts in excitement, like this is the best news ever. Her fiancé's family is clapping, David's grinning like he's just won the lottery, and I'm sitting there, feeling like I just got sucker punched in the gut. It was like everything inside me froze. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Here I am, the guy who's been there for her every step of the way, and now David, the guy who bailed on her over and over, is going to be the one to walk her down the aisle? I didn't know if I was going to cry, scream, or just flip the table over. I've never felt so disrespected in my entire life. I had to get up and do something, so I stood up and raised my glass. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, and everyone goes quiet. You could hear a pin drop. I don't remember everything I said word for word, but the gist of it was this. It's been a pleasure being part of this family for the last 10 years, but today, Sarah and her fiancé have shown me something really important. I used to think I was someone special in this family, but now I see I'm just the guy who pays the bills. Since David is clearly the one who matters, I'll be stepping down from paying for this wedding. He can take care of it from here. You could see the shock spread across their faces. David looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Sarah just sat there, wide-eyed. And Lisa, well, Lisa had this look on her face like she couldn't believe what was happening. I finished my drink, set the glass down, and said, "You can all let yourselves out." And just like that, I was done. Done with the wedding, done with Sarah, and done with Lisa. I transferred the money out of our joint account that night and started making calls to the vendors the next morning. I wasn't going to bankroll a wedding that I wasn't even really a part of. So after that dinner, I didn't waste any time. I went home and started making moves. I was done. I transferred all the money out of the joint account that Lisa and I shared. I knew it was going to hit her hard because, let's be real, she hasn't had a job in years. She's been living off me for as long as I can remember. Every bill, every grocery, every damn thing in that house, it's been on me. And now she had the nerve to cut me out of this wedding and let David play the hero? Nah, not happening. I started with the vendors. First up was the photographer. I'd already paid a deposit, but I figured it was worth a shot to get it back. So I called the guy up, and he was actually pretty chill about it. Said he'd refund me most of it, minus a small fee for holding the date. Whatever, that was fine with me. Better to lose a couple $100 than pay for a whole wedding I'm not even invited to anymore, you know? Next was the caterer. This one had me a little worried because catering companies can be sticklers when it comes to refunds. But again, I lucked out. They had a waiting list of people wanting my date. So they didn't even blink when I asked for my money back. Full refund, no questions asked. At this point, I was feeling pretty good about my decision. Everything was falling into place. The only real hiccup was the venue. They wouldn't give me back the full deposit, but honestly, I expected that. They kept $1,500, which sucked. But considering I was about to drop $1,405,000 on this whole wedding, it was a small price to pay to get out of this disaster. Now I'm not gonna lie, part of me was waiting for the fallout. I knew Lisa wasn't going to take this well, and I was just bracing for the explosion. But you know what? She didn't say anything that night. Not a word. I slept in the guest room, expecting her to come knocking at some point. Maybe to yell or cry or something, but no. Silence. Honestly, that silence was worse than anything else. It was like she'd just given up. Like she didn't care enough to even fight for me, or our relationship. The next morning, things finally hit the fan. I was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking my coffee, when Lisa came in holding Sarah's wedding planner. She dropped it on the table in front of me like it was some kind of evidence in a court case. I didn't say anything. Just stared at her, waiting for whatever rant she was about to unleash. "You're ruining everything," she finally said. Her voice was cold, not even angry, just defeated. I took a deep breath. "I didn't ruin anything, Lisa. You and Sarah made your choices. I'm just reacting to them." She thumbed through the planner, showing me all the details they'd planned out. The flowers, the decorations, the music, everything. I just stared at it, barely listening. I was done. The whole thing was meaningless to me now. But one thing did catch my eye. There was a whole section dedicated to the father-daughter dance. And guess who they picked all the songs for? David. Not me. David. That was the final nail in the coffin for me. I actually laughed. It was just so absurd at that point. I wasn't even a consideration in any of this. They didn't care about me. They cared about my wallet. Look, I said, pushing the planner back toward her. You and Sarah need to move out. Look, I'm not paying for this wedding, and I'm done pretending like we're still a family. You can stay with her fiancé's family or find somewhere else, but you're not staying here. She didn't say much after that. Just grabbed the planner and walked out of the room. I sat there for a while, sipping my coffee, just thinking about everything. 10 years down the drain. It's funny how fast things can unravel when people show you who they really are. A few days went by without much happening. Lisa didn't try to talk to me, and Sarah avoided me like the plague. It was like we were strangers living in the same house. Then one morning, I woke up to find that they were packing. I didn't ask where they were going. I didn't care, as long as they were out. It was hard not to be petty while they packed. I wanted to throw some of their stuff in the garbage, just out of spite, but I held back. I didn't want to lower myself to their level. Besides, I'd already won by pulling the financial rug out from under them. Lisa kept giving me these dirty looks while she packed, but Sarah wouldn't even make eye contact. Good. I didn't want to see her face anyway. They left that afternoon. No goodbyes, no final words, just silence. I locked the door behind them, and it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The house was quiet, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like it was mine again. That night, I changed the locks. Call me paranoid, but I didn't trust that they wouldn't try to come back and pull some stunt. After everything they put me through, I wasn't taking any chances. With the new locks in place, I finally felt like I had control over my life again. I sat on the couch that night, cracked open a beer, and just relaxed. It was weird. I hadn't felt this calm in months. No more wedding stress, no more dealing with Sarah's entitled behavior, no more walking on eggshells around Lisa. I was free. A week later, I heard through the grapevine that they were trying to downsize the wedding. Apparently, Sarah's fiancé's parents were stepping in to help cover the costs, but even they weren't too thrilled about it. I guess Lisa had burned a few bridges along the way. And get this. She actually tried to write herself a check from our joint account the day after the blow-up. Too bad for her. I'd already moved the money. Nice try, though. Now, I'm not saying I'm happy about how things ended, but I'll be honest. I feel a hell of a lot better than I did before. I wasted too much time and money on people who didn't appreciate me. It's crazy how clear things become when you take a step back and really look at the situation. Looking back, I should have seen the signs way earlier. Sarah always had a thing for her real dad, and Lisa never put her foot down. I should have known I was just the guy paying the bills. Nothing more. But hey, lesson learned, right? Now I get to move on with my life without the weight of their crap dragging me down. So yeah, that's where I'm at. The house is quiet, I've got my peace back, and I'm done with all their drama. If I hear more about the wedding, I'll let you guys know. But honestly, I'm not going out of my way to find out. Let them deal with their mess. I'm just glad I'm out of it. So after Lisa and Sarah moved out, things got quiet. Like, really quiet. It was weird at first. 10 years of noise and chaos, and now it's just me. I thought it'd feel lonely, but honestly, it was peaceful. No more wedding drama, no more worrying about Sarah's constant attitude, or Lisa guilt-tripping me. Just silence. But then came the aftermath, the part one didn't really expect. Once the dust settled, I started getting calls. And not just from Lisa or Sarah. Nah, they stay away. But from people who heard, through the grapevine, that I'd pulled the plug on the wedding. I guess word spreads fast when you've got drama this big. First call was from one of Lisa's friends, Maggie. She's always been one of those always in everyone's business types. She calls me up, acting all concerned, like, "Oh, I heard what happened. Are you okay?" Now let me be clear. Maggie is not someone I consider my friend. She's Lisa's friend, the kind of person who always took Lisa's side in every little argument we ever had. So when she's pretending to care, I know it's just because she's fishing for gossip. I wasn't in the mood for that crap. "Maggie, I'm fine," I told her. "It is what it is. Sarah and Lisa made their choices. I made mine." That wasn't good enough for her. She kept pushing, asking for details, trying to make it sound like she was worried about me. I could tell she just wanted to hear me badmouth Lisa or Sarah, but I wasn't giving her the satisfaction. "Well," she said, "I just think you should know that Sarah's really hurt. She didn't mean to exclude you like that." "Oh, really? She didn't mean to?" "I mean, how do you accidentally exclude someone from their own life?" I bit my tongue, though, because the last thing I needed was more trauma. I kept it short and ended the call, but I knew that wasn't the last of it, and I was right. A couple days later, I got a call from Sarah's fiancé's mom, Joyce. Now I'd always thought Joyce was nice. We weren't close or anything, but she seemed like a reasonable person. This call was different, though. She was pissed. She jumped right into it. No small talk, just pure anger. "You've ruined everything," she yelled. "Do you have any idea what you've done to Sarah and Lisa? This wedding was supposed to be perfect, and now they're scrambling to fix your mess." I didn't even know where to start. Here's this woman who has never paid for anything, telling me I've ruined things because I stopped paying for a wedding I wasn't even invited to. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my cool. "Joyce, I didn't ruin anything. Sarah and Lisa did this to themselves. I'm not paying for a wedding that I've been excluded from. If they want a wedding, they can figure it out." She wasn't having it. She went on and on about how I was being selfish and how I should have just sucked it up for Sarah's sake. And the best part? She even suggested that I should still come to the wedding. For appearances. Yeah, because pretending everything's fine after being disrespected is exactly what I'm interested in doing. I told her, "Look, Joyce, if you're so concerned about the wedding, why don't you pay for it?" "I'm done." She didn't have much to say after that, just muttered something under her breath and hung up. That was the last time I heard from her, thank God. But it didn't stop there. Sarah finally decided to reach out, about a week after she and Lisa moved out. She texted me, which honestly kind of pissed me off. Like, she couldn't even call? After everything that happened, she just sends a quick text like it's no big deal. Her message was short and to the point. "I'm really disappointed in how you handle things. I thought you'd be more understanding." Understanding? I stared at that message for a good 5 minutes before I even knew how to respond. Understanding? She seriously thought I was the one who needed to be more understanding? I've spent the last 10 years supporting her, paying for her education, her car, and now her wedding, and she thought I needed to be more understanding? I finally texted back, "I'm disappointed too, Sarah, but I've done enough for you. I'm not paying for a wedding that I'm not part of. Good luck with everything." That was it. She never replied. No apology, no explanation, nothing. Just silence. And honestly, that hurt more than I thought it would. I wasn't expecting her to grovel or anything, but I guess part of me hoped she'd realize how much she'd screwed up. But no. Nothing. After that, things went quiet again. No more calls, no more texts. It was like they'd all just erased me from their lives, which I guess was for the best. But even though the trauma had died down, I couldn't help but feel like I was mourning something. 10 years of my life, and now it was all gone. Lisa, Sarah, the future I thought we had, it was all just over. I started getting back into my routine, though. Work kept me busy, and I reconnected with some old friends. It was weird at first, not having Lisa around, but eventually I started to feel like myself again. I realized how much of my energy had been spent on keeping that relationship going, even when it was clear I wasn't getting anything back. One night I ran into Jake again, the buddy who hadn't been invited to the wedding. I told him everything that had gone down. He just shook his head and laughed. "Man, you dodged a bullet," he said. "If they couldn't even respect you for this, imagine how things would have been down the line." He was right. I'd spent so much time trying to make things work with Lisa and Sarah, thinking that one day they'd appreciate me, but it was never going to happen. And honestly, I'm better off without them. So yeah, that's where things stand. I haven't heard anything about the wedding since then, and I don't really care to. Lisa and Sarah made their choices, and I made mine. I'm moving on with my life, and it feels good to finally be free of their drama. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that you can't force people to respect you. No matter how much you do for them, if they don't see your worth, they never will. And that's fine. I'm done trying to prove myself to people who don't care. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a quiet night ahead of me. No more wedding stress, no more family drama, just peace. Update 1. So, a couple of weeks after everything settled down, I was starting to get used to my new routine. Life was quieter, a lot less stressful. I had the house to myself, and for the first time in a long while, it actually felt like my home again. I thought I'd finally left all the drama behind, but of course, that wasn't going to happen. I should have known better. It started on a random Thursday afternoon. I was at work, going about my day like normal, when I get this call from a number I didn't recognize. Now, I usually ignore those, but for some reason, I picked up this time. And guess who it was? David. Yeah, that David. The real dad. I hadn't spoken to this guy in years, and suddenly he's calling me out of nowhere. At first, I wasn't even sure what to say. I just stood there, holding the phone, half expecting him to apologize or maybe say something to explain why he's calling me. But no. He jumped straight into it like we're old pals. "Hey man, listen, I need to talk to you about something important," he says, his voice all casual, like this is just a normal chat. I'm thinking, what the hell does this guy want? But I stayed calm. "Ah, okay, what's up?" Then he hits me with the craziest thing I've ever heard. He starts telling me how he's been hearing from Sarah and Lisa about how I've overreacted by pulling out of the wedding. Overreacted? This guy, who's barely been in Sarah's life, has the audacity to call me up and say I'm the one in the wrong? He said something about how I should have just let it go for Sarah's sake, that I should have been the bigger person and stayed involved. I was fuming. Here's this guy, who swoops in at the last minute to play the role of the loving dad, telling me how I should have handled the situation. The same guy who abandoned her over and over again while I was there every day, paying for everything, making sure she had what she needed. I couldn't believe it. But it gets worse. After lecturing me about how I was wrong, he drops the real reason he's calling. Apparently, Sarah and her fiancé were struggling to make ends meet with the wedding after I pulled out, and David was trying to convince me to pitch in again. He actually had the nerve to ask if I could help him pay for the wedding. The same wedding I wasn't even invited to. I couldn't help it. I started laughing. I didn't mean to, but the whole thing was just too ridiculous. This guy seriously thought I'd hand over my hard-earned money to bail him out after he and Sarah pushed me aside? Nah, not a chance. "David," I said, still trying to stop myself from laughing. "There's no way I'm giving you a single cent. You and Sarah made your choices. You want to play dad? Go ahead and pay for the wedding yourself." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a second, I thought maybe he'd hung up. But then he sighed and said, "Come on, man. We're family. This is for Sarah's happiness." That hit a nerve. Family? I've spent 10 years trying to be there for Sarah, trying to build a family with her and Lisa, and now, suddenly, he's family because it's convenient? I wasn't having any of it. We're not family, I said, my voice harder than I meant it to be. You haven't been around. You don't get to play the family card now just because it suits you. If you really care about Sarah, then you figure it out. I'm done. And then I hung up. I'm not proud of it, but at that moment, I didn't care. I was done being the nice guy, done being walked over. The whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth, though. It wasn't just the fact that David had the nerve to call me. It was the fact that Sarah and Lisa were still trying to use me, even after I made it clear I was out. I couldn't believe they were desperate enough to send David to try and get money out of me. But if you thought that was the end, oh boy, you'd be wrong. A few days later, I get another call. This time, it's from Sarah herself. She hadn't spoken to me since the whole wedding debacle went down, so I figured something must have happened. Part of me thought, maybe she's realized what a mess this has all been and wants to apologize. Stupid, right? I answer the phone, and before I can even get a word in, she's already going off. Why are you making things harder for everyone? Do you know how much stress you've put me under? You should have just gone along with it. Why couldn't you just be supportive? I'm standing there, phone in hand, just stunned. I don't even know how to respond at first, because it's like she's talking to a different version of me, one who apparently hasn't done anything for her over the last decade. Sarah, I said, trying to stay calm. I was supportive. I've been supporting you for 10 years. I pay for your school, your car, everything. But I'm not paying for a wedding I've been cut out of. That's not how this works. She wasn't having it. She kept going on about how I was ruining everything, and how I needed to stop being selfish. I couldn't believe it. Here I was. The guy who had been there for her every step of the way, and now I'm the selfish one because I won't bankroll a wedding where I've been erased. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with the same Sarah anymore. The Sarah I helped raise, the one I'd spent years supporting, was gone. She had been replaced by someone who only saw me as a means to an end. As long as I was paying, I was useful. But the moment I said no, I was the villain. It hurt, more than I'd like to admit. But in that moment, I made peace with it. I wasn't going to change her mind, and I wasn't going to win this argument. I'd already won by walking away from the wedding, and that was enough. Look, Sarah, I said, my voice steady. You've made your choices. I've made mine. I wish you and your fiancé the best. But I'm done. You're on your own. And that was it. She didn't reply, just hung up. After that, I knew I had to close this chapter for good. I was done being the guy they turned to only when they needed something. I deserved better than that. So I started focusing on myself. My job, my friends, my life. And you know what? It felt good. Sure, it stung at first, but sometimes, you have to walk away from people who don't see your value. And that's exactly what I did. Update 2. So, after all the crap with Sarah and David calling me to basically beg for money, things started to calm down. Or at least, I thought they did. I guess when you cut people out of your life, you expect everything to just stop. Like, the drama goes away and you finally get to live in peace. I was about to learn it doesn't work like that. Not with people like Sarah and Lisa. A few weeks after Sarah's last call, I get home from work. And there's this letter in my mailbox. No return address, just my name scribbled on the front. I already had a bad feeling about it before I even opened the thing. Sure enough, it's from Lisa. The letter was full of the usual garbage. She starts by acting like she's trying to be reasonable, saying she understands why I pulled out of the wedding, but that it was unfair to leave them scrambling. She said I should have had more respect for Sarah's feelings and helped her out for old time's sake. Yeah, right, like I'm going to forget everything that's happened and just swoop back in with my wallet because they can't figure out how to pay for their own mess. But then Lisa goes further. She actually tries to guilt trip me by saying Sarah's struggling with depression now because of everything that's happened. She writes, she's been really down ever since you cut her out, and it's affecting her mental health. I'm worried about her. Maybe if you could sit down with her and have a heart-to-heart, things would be different. That hit me harder than I expected. Not because I believed her, but because part of me wanted to. I'd spent 10 years raising Sarah like my own kid, and even after all this, there was a small part of me that still wanted to make things right. But I couldn't. I knew if I went back into their lives, it'd be the same cycle all over again. Me giving, them taking, and me ending up feeling used. I threw the letter in the trash and went inside. I wasn't about to let them drag me back into their trauma. Still, it stuck with me for a few days. I kept thinking, what if she's really struggling? What if I'm the one who pushed her over the edge? But then I remembered everything Sarah did. How she cut me out of the wedding. How she replaced me with David. This wasn't my mess to fix. They made their choices, and I made mine. A couple weeks later, I got a call from Jake, my buddy from the golf course. He's been one of the few people who's stuck by me through all this. He invites me over for a barbecue, says he's got some news. I figure, why not? It's been a while since I hung out with the guys, and I could use a distraction. So I head over to Jake's place, and as soon as I walk in, I can tell something's up. There's this weird energy in the air, like everyone knows something I don't. We're all standing around the grill, cracking open a couple beers, when Jake pulls me aside. Dude, you're not going to believe this, he says, grinning like he's about to drop the juiciest gossip ever. I roll my eyes, expecting some dumb story about one of the guys getting into trouble. But then he hits me with it. Sarah's wedding got canceled. I almost spit out my beer. What, canceled? Like, completely? He nods, and I can see he's trying not to laugh. Yeah, man. Apparently, there was some big blow-up between her and her fiancé's family, and the whole thing just fell apart. I didn't know whether to laugh or feel sorry for her. Part of me was like, serves her right. But another part of me remembered all the time and money I had put into that wedding before everything went sideways. All those months of planning, all the drama, and now it was just over. I asked Jake for more details, and he told me that Sarah's fiancé's family wasn't too happy with how things had been going. Turns out, Sarah and Lisa had been pushing for an even bigger wedding than they originally planned, and when they couldn't afford it without my help, they tried to get her fiancé's parents to cover the difference. Apparently, that didn't go over too well, and after a few big arguments, the whole thing just collapsed. Part of me wanted to reach out to Sarah, maybe to see how she was holding up, but I stopped myself. I knew if I got involved again, it'd just drag me back into the drama. And honestly, after everything they put me through, I didn't owe them anything. The barbecue went on, and I tried not to think too much about it. But later that night, when I got home, it hit me. This was it. The wedding was canceled, the relationship was done, and there was nothing left to tie me to Sarah or Lisa anymore. It was a weird feeling, like I had finally closed the book on this whole chapter of my life. Over the next few weeks, I started focusing more on myself. I picked up some new hobbies, spent more time with friends, and even started dating again. It felt good to move on, like I was finally living for me instead of always worrying about someone else's problems. One day, out of the blue, yeah, I know I'm not supposed to use that phrase, but screw it, I got a text from Lisa. I hadn't heard from her since the letter she sent about Sarah's depression. The message was short and cold. Just wanted to let you know we're moving out of state. Sarah's starting over. I stared at my phone for a while after reading it, trying to process how I felt. I guess part of me was relieved. Them moving away meant I wouldn't have to worry about running into them or dealing with their trauma again. But another part of me felt empty. Not sad exactly, but like something had finally come to an end, and I wasn't sure how to feel about it. I didn't respond to the text. There was nothing left to say. So, that's where things stand now. Sarah and Lisa are out of my life for good, and I'm finally free. It took a lot of crap to get here, but I feel like I've come out the other side stronger. Sure, it still stings sometimes, thinking about how things ended, but I've learned that some people just aren't worth the effort. You can bend over backward for them, but if they don't see your worth, it's never going to work. And now, I'm just focusing on me. It's funny how much better life gets when you stop putting your energy into people who don't appreciate it. Anyway, thanks for sticking around through all of this. Life's looking up, and I'm ready for whatever comes next. No more drama. No more games. Just peace.
Thanks for listening. Share your opinion in comment section and also do like and subscribe to the channel.